Over the past couple of decades, thanks to technology, some of our terminology has changed. For example, a mouse used to be a little squeaky rodent with a wiggly nose and a tail, but now most of us know that a mouse could also mean a piece of computer equipment. Beyond that, though, some people are kind of clueless about what they're supposed to do with a mouse. Now, maybe completely clueless isn't the right thing to say. A lot of people also understand that a mouse is used to point at things on the screen, but it actually does much more. And it may seem funny to some, but we do have people who think the mouse and pointing on the screen is like using the remote control for their TV. So they pick it up and they try to do this. Well, that's not what we do with the mouse. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at all of the different types of mice or pointing devices that are available. We'll take a look at these pieces and parts, the buttons and the wheels and what you do with them. We'll show you some of the techniques to use a mouse appropriately, as well as how to set settings for yourself on the computer so the mouse behaves exactly the way that you need it to. After all, we want to have a well-behaved mouse for our computer. In the old days of computers, if you used a computer at all on your job, you probably had to know a lot of commands that you actually typed on a keyboard in order to make it do stuff. This was called text-based computing, using something like the DOS operating system. And it was really hard and difficult for people to learn because you had to type things exactly the right way, and if you didn't, guess what? Nothing worked. Well, thank goodness now we have a mouse, because now it's simply a matter of using the mouse and what we call a GUI, which stands for a graphical user interface, which means that we can simply click on things that we see on the screen. This makes it very, very simple. But what it also means is that we have to know how to use the mouse. But just have to trust me for now. Clicking is going to be much better than typing commands. So let's get started with understanding what a mouse actually is. Well, first of all, going back to our basic concepts, a mouse, of course, is a piece of hardware, something that you can actually pick up or put your hands on. It also is an input device, because the things that we do with the mouse give instructions or input to the computer. More importantly, or maybe more specifically, I should say, it actually controls the cursor on the screen. Now it can be used to select things, to launch or start programs, to move, or to do a variety of other things that we'll explore throughout the rest of this course. And it can do that with programs, files, folders, and more, including the operating system itself. Now the mouse, or mice in the plural, have many different variations, but the same basic concepts and skills apply regardless of which one you actually have. I think what we should do next, though, is actually take a look at what some of our options are. A mouse is also called a pointing device, and the reason that we use the term pointing device is because that's actually what it does. It moves the cursor or the pointer on screen. So mouse is actually a specific type of hardware. Pointing device is actually something that's more generic, but frankly, most people don't use the word pointing device. So regardless of which one you have, most people will refer to it as a mouse. Although we do have a typical mouse, we also have things called trackballs. Lately, we also have things known as touchpads or graphics tablets. And if you have a laptop, it may even have something called an eraser head. What we can see on the top of the screen are the typical mice. It has a button usually. It might even have a scroll wheel. A trackball replaces the need to move the mouse itself by letting you roll a ball. And we'll take a look at all of this in just a second. When we talk about a graphics tablet or a touchpad, touchpads are usually found on laptops. It's just a little kind of screen, usually at the bottom below the space bar, and you simply move your finger over it. And a graphics tablet allows you to use a pen or a stylus, just like you would write on a piece of paper. That's nice for people like artists or people who prefer to write with their hands rather than typing. Lastly, of course, we have that little eraser head, and that's kind of the oddball of the group, if you will. This actually is at a fixed point, usually right in the middle of a laptop keyboard, and you simply pivot it. Now, there are also, of course, variations that combine some of these things. Here's an example of both trackball with some mouse buttons. Now, I know this one looks kind of complicated because it actually has 4 buttons, but somebody like an engineer who's doing CAD-type drawings might need to have a mouse with more than just 2 buttons. Regardless of which type you have, the mouse is always going to be about moving the cursor and or clicking, and whatever you have to do to accomplish those 2 tasks. When you get the mouse, it is of course hardware, so it somehow has to be connected to your computer or your CPU. One of those ways is the old wired mouse. Usually this is going to use a mouse port like we see on the left of these 2 pictures, or more commonly these days, the USB port. Wireless mice are getting to be more and more common though. People don't like cords having to be tied to their computer. A wireless mouse is going to have the mouse itself, but then it has to have some type of receiver, usually attached to a USB port. And here you can see an example of a very tiny receiver that would be put into one of the USB ports on your computer. Another technology that's evolving these days is Bluetooth. Now you might be familiar with Bluetooth using a headset with your cell phone. It's the same kind of concept with your computer. Wireless and Bluetooth are very similar. Bluetooth actually is a wireless device, but it's a specific technology for wireless. If you have a Bluetooth mouse, you'll need to have a receiver that looks very similar to the one for a USB port, or a lot of laptops have Bluetooth actually built in, so that you won't actually see any receiver. It's just built into the laptop, and there's a port or a receiver somewhere on the laptop case itself. When we talk about the parts of the mouse, they're always going to be basically the same, even though things like trackballs and touchpads may have them or use them a little bit differently. Each type can be slightly different, but you're going to have at least two buttons, usually called left and right, but sometimes they can also be called primary and secondary. You may also have a scroll wheel, and the scroll wheel could also have tilt capability. There may also be multiple other buttons, most of which can be configured to do specific things you want. We're going to stick, though, with the basics. But what you now know is that a mouse is a piece of hardware, it's an input device, and it can come in a variety of different configurations and types. Basically, they all work the same, and that's what we'll take on in our next section, is how do we actually use those buttons and those wheels.